All right, you ready for this? Check this out. This is good. Beam up, A-Town down. Get it? Because it's what Usher says, and he's from Atlanta. Beam up, because the Sacramento Kings won, and A-Town down, because the Atlanta Hawks lost. They went down because the Kings beat them. This show sucks.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News, and I would apologize for how I started today's podcast and that god-awful corny opening, but I've been thinking up that for hours because I've been standing in the rain shooting high school football for ABC 10. That's why this podcast is coming out so late. So sorry to everybody who is anxiously anticipating it. I've been looking forward to breaking down this Kings win over the Atlanta Hawks and talking about this game for hours while sitting in the rain. So you have to sit through that introduction as I had to sit through that the downpour while at high school football games. But very excited to break down this Kings win. And the title of this podcast is Stolen. It's a line that I stole from Sacramento Kings color commentator and analyst, television analyst, Katie Christensen. She said this at the very, very end of the broadcast after the Sacramento Kings had secured the win. She said that the Sacramento Kings were tested in Atlanta tonight, and they passed the test. And I thought that was a beautifully simple but honest way of summarizing this game for Sacramento, right? Because once again, just like the two games before, over the course of this 3-game win streak that the Kings are on, Sacramento was pretty much in control from the jump, right? That doesn't mean that they had lapses at times. In fact, the Atlanta Hawks made multiple big runs in this game. Multiple times the Sacramento Kings had a 17-point lead in the second quarter, right? Atlanta goes on a big run, brought it down to like 3 or 4 points. And then the Kings did a really good job responding and taking a 10-point lead into the halftime break. Kings build up another big lead midway to late through the second half. And then Atlanta goes on that massive fourth quarter run, humongous fourth quarter run to actually take a lead with a handful of minutes remaining. And I'm watching this happen, and I know many of you are watching this happen, and we're going, they're going to do it again. Like exactly what happened in game 1 against Minnesota and pretty much kind of what happened in game 2 versus the Lakers. It's going to happen again. The Kings are going to fall victim to one big run. The wheels are going to fall off, and the Atlanta Hawks are going to find a way to steal all momentum and steal this win from right out underneath Sacramento. And honestly, I've seen a number of people say this on social media since the game ended, and they're, I think, 100% right. Last year's Sacramento Kings team, I think, loses this game like 95% of the time. The wheels fall off, and Sacramento just can't get the damage under control in time. They don't respond well enough, and they just fall apart and lose this game. The Kings were very much put to the test. And what's really encouraging about this Kings win tonight is that the Kings didn't just have to correct an issue from last year. Right? This is only game 5 of the season, and the Sacramento Kings had to correct and learn from the mistakes of game 1 and 2. Right? It was a little over a week ago, that the Sacramento Kings blew 2 leads against Minnesota and Los Angeles. So they take those lessons learned from those two games, apply them in the moment while Atlanta is rocking, right? That crowd at State Farm Arena, I think it's called. That crowd is going crazy because the Hawks have caught fire from three-point range in the second half, and they have come roaring all the way back to take a lead in the fourth quarter. All of the momentum is on their side, and all of the hard work of the Sacramento Kings through 3.5 quarters is basically erased, eliminated, gone. And the Kings take that moment and pair it with the lessons learned from games 1 and game 2, and they turn to their new clutch combo. They turn to De'Aaron Fox and DeMar DeRozan, who do exactly what you brought them together here in Sacramento to do. So the Kings on the wrong end of this massive run. Sacramento Kings down by 1. De'Aaron Fox hits a big bucket. DeMar DeRozan hits a big bucket. De'Aaron Fox hits a big bucket again. A 6-0 run from Fox and DeRozan. And what I love about that run is, one, it put the Kings back on top in terms of the scoring column, gave them like 5 points of separation. The Atlanta Hawks call a timeout, and the camera pans over to De'Aaron Fox, who had just hit the most recent big shot. And if you're watching this game on YouTube, you'll see in the thumbnail, you'll see the photo, the hand motion, right? He has his hands in like a calm it down motion. Now, a lot of times you'll see players doing this to tell the crowd, shh, be quiet, crowd. Like, you had your moment, you had your hype, but we're shutting it down. We're taking over here. That, to me, was not a calm it down or be quiet to the crowd. I think that was De'Aaron saying that to himself, saying that to his teammates, right? This game got out of control. We were in the driver's seat for pretty much the entire time. Atlanta exploded. We were reeling. The wheels kind of fell off. We're against the ropes. We hit these big shots. Atlanta takes a timeout. Take a breath. Calm down. Slow down. We're the better team. We're reestablishing control. Let's go out and close this game out and get this win. I thought all of that was summed up by Fox's facial expressions and that calm it down motion. Kings come out of the timeout. What do? They close this game down. De'Aaron Fox and DeMar DeRozan were fantastic in this game. De'Aaron Fox, I was literally talking about it yesterday. I did a Halloween podcast with Alan Stiles from Sacktown Sports 1140, and we were spending a lot of time, of course, talking about the Kings offense, and De'Aaron Fox came up because out of the big three in Sacramento, Fox has been the lowest scorer out of the big three of Sabonis, DeRozan, and Fox. Their scoring so far this season in the first 4 games has been in that order. And Alan and I were saying, like, that 30-point game, that first 30-point game is coming. And it's coming soon. Lo and behold, the very next night, we get it from De'Aaron Fox. Fox had to step up as the superstar tonight, and he did it pretty consistently throughout the entire game. 10 of his 31 points came in the first quarter, right? So he opened the game strong for the Kings, and then he helped close this game down at the end. The Kings needed every bit of the 31 points that De'Aaron Fox had tonight. Shot 4 of 6 from three-point range, which you love to see. He's been shooting or struggling shooting the basketball so far this season from deep. I think coming into tonight's game, he was around like 27% or something like that from 3. He's still been putting up a lot of shots, as Alan and I broke down, but the three-pointer hasn't really been falling for him, hence the reason why his scoring numbers have been maybe a bit lower than we expected to start this year. But he hits 4 of 6 three-pointers, also has 7 rebounds, 4 steals in this game. Did turn the ball over 6 times, which he'll be the first one to point out. That's never good from anybody, but especially not your point guard. But he created 4 steals. Remember, he's the reigning steals leader in the NBA from last season, so he did a great job there. And in the fourth quarter, he had 10 points and shot a perfect 4 of 4 from the field, including 1 of 1 from three-point range. When it mattered in crunch time, De'Aaron Fox stepped up and led Sacramento to this victory just like he did when he won the Clutch Player of the Year 2 years ago. And that doesn't mean that DeMar DeRozan took a back seat, because while DeRozan didn't shoot the ball the greatest in the fourth quarter, I think he went like 1 of 3 from the field. He got to the foul line 4 times, knocked down all 4 free throws. DeMar DeRozan, 27 points tonight. 9 of 16 shooting. He also went 1 of 1 from three-point range. Got to the foul line 10 times, hit 8 of them, which is great. I think the first 2 foul shots that he missed were the first 2 foul shots of the game that he took. He also had 9 rebounds, which is fantastic for him. 3 steals and a block. So continuing to do good and make an impact in the defensive statistical columns. And he's been doing that a lot so far this season. With the 27-point performance tonight, that is now 5 straight games to start his Sacramento Kings career. 5 straight games where he scored 20 or more points. He's sneaking up on Oscar Robertson and Chris Webber. I think Chris Webber's streak was 7, if I'm not mistaken. It was either 7 or 9, but I think it was 7. I could be wrong there. But DeMar continues to just, again, why would anybody be surprised? Why would we expect anything different? This is what DeMar DeRozan does. He's averaged 20 points per game for 11 straight seasons. Over 20 points per game for 11 straight seasons. Why would we expect it would be any different here in Sacramento? And Cam Salerno, formerly of the Sacramento Bee, now works for CBS Sports, and he works down in Southern California, but he's a Sacramento kid through and through. Cam put out a really, really interesting stat that I actually want to spend a little time talking about, because there's low-hanging fruit to this stat that I don't want you to get distracted by. DeMar DeRozan, already this season in 5 games, has as many 23-plus point per game, 23-plus point performances as Harrison Barnes did in all 82 games last season. The low-hanging fruit there is to talk crap about Harrison Barnes. And we know HB's inconsistencies. We know how good the Sacramento Kings were. On nights where Harrison scored, on nights where Harrison broke 20 points, the Kings were damn near undefeated. Right? When they got a good scoring output from Harrison Barnes, Sacramento was very successful over the last couple of seasons. But we knew that in terms of scoring, in terms of numbers, period, Harrison Barnes' inconsistency was the major reason why the Sacramento Kings felt that they needed to upgrade that position. So I don't bring that stat up to talk about Harrison Barnes. I bring that stat up to focus on the necessary and clear upgrade that the Sacramento Kings have made. Not only did they go out and get a better scorer than Harrison Barnes, not only did they go out and get, I think, a better passer than Harrison Barnes, and probably close to, if not slightly better rebounder than Harrison Barnes. The Sacramento Kings went out and got themselves a lean-on-me reliable bucket. And we talked about this a lot during the offseason. There were times where Sacramento turned to Harrison over the years here to help get them a big bucket down the stretch, to take some of that pressure and responsibility off of De'Aaron Fox. How many times did we see the Kings go to Harrison Barnes like in a low post or mid-range post scenario for Harrison to just try and get the Kings a bucket? Right? That is what DeMar DeRozan does, but at a significantly higher level. And he can do it at any point in the game. And he's one of the best in the league at it, especially from the mid-range. Once again, DeRozan was unstoppable or close to unstoppable from mid-range. Half the time, like if you defend DeMar DeRozan, more than often than not, you're going to foul him because you feel like you can block his shot, but you can't. He's so good at drawing contact. So if you don't defend him, you just kind of have to hope he misses. Now, DeMar missed a handful of shots tonight for sure, but I think it's not probably the best strategy on the planet to just defend DeMar by hoping he misses shots. So DeMar has stepped up in a major way in these first 5 games, right? 27 huge points tonight. You got 58 points between Fox and DeRozan tonight. And then you got good output from the supporting cast. I want to talk about Keegan Murray, who I feel has quickly become one of the most all-around reliable players on the Sacramento Kings. I want to talk about Kevin Huerter and his return to Atlanta, Domantas Sabonis, who fouled out of this game, Keon Ellis got off to a great start. There's a lot still to talk about. I also want to talk about Mike Brown's rotations, too. That's all still to come here on Locked On Kings. Like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5, just $5, and get $150 in bonus bets when you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place bets on all of the NFL action this season. Of course, NBA action as well, college athletics when they're going on, when baseball returns, NHL hockey. It's all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, place your play, and you get just so many more things available to you, right? Stats, numbers, active game updates, all in the same place where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Let's run through a handful of other individual performances for the Sacramento Kings tonight. Then I want to talk about Mike Brown's rotation and Sacramento's three-point defense. But I said this before going to the break, and I don't think it's a hot take or outlandish thing to say at all. In his third season in the league, I think Keegan Murray might be, if he's not number one, he's probably number two, the most all-around reliable player that the Sacramento Kings have. And I mean just doing a little bit of everything and being involved in multiple ways. Tonight, 14 points, 10 rebounds, 3 of them offensive. His second double-double already this season. Also had 3 assists and a block. First off, this is like his second or third game in a row where he's in the mid to low teens, right? I think it's back-to-back 14-point performances or something like that. I'm not bothered at all by the low scoring numbers. I was on with D'Lo and KC yesterday, and KC asked me this question, like, are you concerned at all with how Keegan Murray is scoring? And if this were to be what Keegan is this season, if he were to stay around his 15-point per game average or even drop down a little bit, would you be concerned by it? As long as he continues to make consistent winning basketball plays like he's done in all 5 of these games, including the games that the Kings have lost, as long as he's continuing to take the primary defensive responsibility on a nightly basis, as long as he's continuing to crash the glass, especially the offensive glass with reckless abandon, as he calls it, hell no, I'm not bothered by those scoring numbers because the Sacramento Kings have a better roster to make up for scoring than they have a better roster to make up for lack of defense or lack of rebounding, right? Keegan Murray has recognized that while he is still an important scoring piece, and the Kings will 100% lean on Keegan Murray for scoring on certain nights, and he could have absolutely scored more than he did tonight. He missed a couple of open threes. He missed some shots. So there are going to be games where he is in the 20s just naturally because he's hitting more looks. That being said, like, if this is who Keegan is, if you're getting this kind of input outside of scoring, right, the Sacramento Kings are built to be able to handle that. And I wouldn't even say it's handling it. I would more say this is Keegan recognizing what the team needs and in his third season going out and being willing to do it. Answering the call, answering the challenge of his coaches. I thought his fourth quarter defense was excellent. His one block came in the fourth quarter. It was when the Sacramento Kings were trying to put this game away. And I think it was after Domantas Sabonis fouled out. We'll talk more about Sabonis later on. But Keegan stepped up and had a pretty big block when this game was still within reach for Atlanta to help kind of close this game out and put it away. I mean, Keegan was huge defensively in the fourth quarter. Again, his rebounding is amazing. I don't think there is anybody who has stepped up and answered the call for this new offensive rebound initiative more than Keegan Murray has, and I've said that many times already this season, and I'll continue to say it. I don't care. I'll be a broken record about it because it deserves to be pointed out. It deserves to be highlighted. Keegan loves to crash the offensive glass, clearly, and teams are having a very hard time keeping him out there. And he's just consistently making the right decision with the basketball, whether it's trying to attack the basket. He had a play. I'm trying to remember exactly what happened. I think it was in the second half, but he had a play where he missed a shot and the Kings got an offensive rebound. I'm pretty sure this is what happened. Kings got an offensive rebound, got the ball back to Keegan, who was kind of at the free throw line, right? And Keegan looks at the rim, looks for a pass, and decides to take one dribble, go to the left hand, and lay it up with the left hand around the defender. Just a really smart, controlled basketball play. It's not the greatest of highlights, And it's not necessarily something to be like to ooh and awe at. I just thought it was a very veteran, mature decision in the moment. A really good basketball play by Keegan, and it stuck with me. And he made a number of those tonight. He's made a number of those over the course of this season so far. And I can say the same thing about making the right decision with the basketball. I can say the exact same thing about Kevin Huerter. Former Atlanta Hawk making his return to Atlanta. 10 points. Shooting percentages are not great. We can be honest. 4 of 13 from the field, 2 of 8 from three-point range. But he had 4 assists and a steal. You know, I have to eat my own words in some ways, because I've said that if Kevin Huerter isn't hitting shots, you're not really getting anything out of him. Well, so far this season, he's kind of proved me wrong, because more often than not, Kevin hasn't been hitting his shots, which, yeah, that's a little concerning. You'd like to see him hit more shots, of course. But I think Kevin has more than done enough to earn the minutes that he's getting. He played 24 minutes tonight as a starter. That's fine. And during those 24 minutes, I don't think at any point he was bad on the defensive or offensive end. He had a couple of great dimes to Domantas Sabonis, like within 30 seconds to a minute of each other. Just really smart plays where he was off the dribble, looking for something. Nothing was there. Had one that was just a thread the needle bounce pass to Sabonis and another wraparound pass to Sabonis. Like a couple of great dimes and great decisions there. And I love the fact that the Kings drew up a play for Huerter right out of the gate, right? Your return to Atlanta right away. They had a Kevin Huerter 3 off of a screen. And Huerter drained it. He hit it. It was a great way to start the game, and I love that Huerter came out shooting with confidence. Domantas Sabonis tonight, his lowest scoring game of the season, and that's fine because De'Aaron and DeMar DeRozan stepped up in such a major way, but you got 15 points from Sabonis, 5 of 11 from the field. His patented double-double with 14 rebounds, also had 6 assists. I thought there were times that he didn't make the right plays. There were times that he had a couple of boneheaded fouls, if we're being honest. He also had a couple of fouls called against him that were, I thought, really, really soft. Like there was an offensive foul called on Domantas Sabonis when De'Aaron Fox threw down a nasty jam that I thought was stupid soft. Sabonis was just standing there and he kind of turned and pivoted. It wasn't setting a screen or anything like that. He was just using his body and his position to block off the defender. Didn't stick his leg out, didn't stick his hip out, didn't open his arms up. He was just there, standing there. And the defender ran into him. Fox had the lane, threw it down, and I think it was Scott Foster that called the offensive foul on Domantas Sabonis. I thought it was a terrible call. So Sabonis got hit with a couple of ticky-tack fouls tonight that I didn't necessarily agree with. He was less aggressive offensively than we've seen so far to start this season. He was also dealing with Clint Capella, who's kind of a longer defender, but Sabonis usually doesn't have too much trouble with those guys. So Sabonis wasn't his best, but he was still obviously very impactful. And then credit to Trey Lyles, because when Domantas Sabonis fouled out with a good chunk of time left in a close game in the fourth quarter, Trey Lyles came in, the Kings went a little bit small, and Trey held the spot down. I thought Trey gave the Sacramento Kings some solid minutes. I think he played 19 minutes or something like that off the bench tonight. So credit to Trey Lyles. Also, of course, credit to Keon Ellis. Keon Ellis finished with 12 points, 4 of 5 from the field, 2 assists, 1 block. Of course, he continues to do those things on the defensive end that don't show up in the box score. Just a very active, pesky defender. And he scored 10 points like De'Aaron Fox did in that first quarter. Keon Ellis was fantastic getting the Sacramento Kings offense going, shooting the ball with confidence, especially from three-point range, which you love to see from Keon. Let's talk about Mike Brown's 8-man rotation and Sacramento's three-point defense that they have to continue to clean up. That's all still coming for you here in just a second. Just a reminder, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by Game Time. This is the app you need to be using to get your tickets to whatever the event is. A future Kings game or any sporting event? Sure. A concert, a comedy show, a theatrical production, whatever it is, Game Time has tickets for it. And they have a Game Time Picks feature that is so important. You won't realize how game-changing it is until you use it for the first time. Game Time Picks helps you choose the event that you want, right? Let's say you want to get tickets for the Kings and Raptors when the Kings return from this road trip. Well, Game Time Picks will go through all of the available tickets, sift through hundreds or thousands of tickets even, and it'll find you the best deals so you don't have to search through them and find them yourself. That's one of just the amazing features that Game Time has. Like, they're all in pricing. This feature shows you the total up front, so you won't be hit with any hidden fees or surprise fees at checkout. They have the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And Game Time's ticketing coverage is incredible. Your purchase is covered by the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Mike Brown had essentially an 8-man rotation tonight, and this is not the first time that Mike has done this. In fact, he's been pretty consistent with this for the majority of the season to this point. And I say mostly an 8-man rotation because Colby Jones did play 11 seconds in this game. He came in to help defensively at the end of a quarter. But in reality, it was the Kings starting 5, Malik Monk, Keon Ellis, and Trey Lyles off the bench. Now, when you are only playing 8 guys, minutes come into question. The Kings' big 3 played 37 to 39 minutes. We're talking about Fox, Sabonis, and DeRozan. Keegan Murray played 33 minutes. Kevin Huerter played 24. Malik Monk played 29 off of the bench. And then both Keon Ellis and Trey Lyles had around 19 minutes each. A couple things that I want to... One, I mean, those minutes are better than they were in the first couple of games in the season where the Kings went super, super heavy on DeRozan and Sabonis and Fox and Keegan. And at that time, Mike was telling us, one, he doesn't want to play those guys that many minutes. He has to figure that out. And two, at that time, he was telling us, hey, I'm not really as comfortable with my rotations. But the last home game the Kings played, which was the Portland game, before that game, Mike told us, I'm starting to feel, I think I feel comfortable with my rotation now. And here he is playing only 8 guys. Now, what I like is I'm glad Keon Ellis is one of those 8, right? Like we've talked about after he made those comments before the Portland game about Keon being a situational starter. Hopefully that ship has sailed because not situational starter, situational rotation player, that he will play if the situation is right. The situation should pretty much always be right for Keon Ellis to play. Keon should be playing on a nightly basis, and he has been since that Portland game, since he didn't play in the Laker loss. But if Mike is saying that he has a pretty comfortable grasp on his rotation, and the Kings are now consistently pretty much only playing 8 guys, that tells me that either Mike is having a really, really hard time or keeping his top guys off the floor, which could be true with how important they are, or Mike doesn't really trust anybody outside of his top 8. And if that's the case, and I don't mean that as a negative to Jordan McLaughlin or Doug McDermott or Alex Len, who didn't play in this game, because Mike has said in the past too, he feels like Alex Len has to play or the Sacramento Kings are too small. Well, tonight against Atlanta, the Kings could get away with Alex Len not playing. Against a team like the Denver Nuggets when you're dealing with Nikola Jokic, or the Suns when you're dealing with Yusuf Nurkic, or the Clippers when you're dealing with Zubats. I don't think the Kings can, or the Timberwolves when you're dealing with Rudy Gobert, right? Alex Len will probably play in those games. So that's what we're talking about, like situational rotation player. If Mike doesn't feel like he has 9 guys that he can comfortably, consistently play, I feel like you need a 9th guy. You need a reliable 9th guy. Now, that doesn't mean that one of these guys won't emerge as the season goes on. But if we get to around the trade deadline or midway through the season and the Kings still don't feel like they have a reliable 9th option, maybe Devin Carter can be that when he comes back from injury, but we're talking about a rookie coming off of surgery. That's something that Monty McNair is going to have to address, I think. And it's not going to take a monstrous, monumental move to address it, right? We kind of talked about the idea of like John Collins from Atlanta. He could potentially be a 9th guy that the Kings could go out and get. But there are pieces out there. But I don't know how much faith I have in the Sacramento Kings having success with just an 8-man rotation consistently throughout this season. And I especially get nervous, knock on wood, and this is true regardless of your depth, but especially true when you don't have reliable depth. If the Kings deal with some significant injury issues, like if they lose De'Aaron Fox, again, knock on wood, they lose De'Aaron Fox for a handful of games. He's dealing with his finger injury, right? They lose De'Aaron Fox for a handful of games. I'm pretty confident that between Malik Monk and Keon Ellis, and then Jordan McLaughlin, I think, getting some playing time there. The Kings could be okay. We know if the Kings lose Domantas Sabonis for any extended period of time, they're in big trouble because nobody does what Domas does. But if the Kings are having trouble with their depth and reliable depth, I don't know how, they might be in big trouble if they deal with any kind of consistent injury issues to not just their main guys, but really their starting five plus their sixth and seventh man. So that's something that I think we got to keep a little bit of a close eye on at this point, because I don't think Mike Brown wants to only play 8 guys. And I'm sure a different guy, 9th guys will get opportunity at times, and they have to be ready to step up in that opportunity. Maybe it was just a matchup thing with the Atlanta Hawks tonight. One thing the Kings do 100% have to clean up, in addition to, of course, these big runs, but a consistent theme of what's happening during those big runs is opposing teams are getting hot from three-point range. The Hawks shot 19 of 50, which is 38% from three-point range overall in this game. Not too bad. The problem is that they shot 13 of 27, 46% in the second half. The Hawks got back into this game and stuck around and hung around because they were hitting threes. They were very much living and dying by that three-point shot. And this is going to be common for the Sacramento Kings to face because teams know that the Kings are vulnerable on the perimeter. Teams know that the Kings will sacrifice perimeter defense and will allow open looks by trying to rotate and control the paint. Teams know that's how they can kind of break down Sacramento's offense, or defense rather. Get them kind of into a scramble drill, right? Get them to move the ball around the perimeter, work inside out, paint touches and sprays, which are things that Mike Brown wants the Kings to do offensively. Other teams are doing that against Sacramento. Paint touches and spray threes, and Sacramento has a hard time dealing with that. They need to clean this up, especially if Sacramento is going to have more of a midi 2-point driven offense, because the Kings tonight didn't shoot that many threes. They went 11 of 33 from three-point range tonight, 33%. Only 33 threes is really low for this Kings team. I don't think they're intentionally not shooting threes. I just think they're getting more mid-range looks, and DeMar DeRozan, of course, is a big reason for that. The Kings can't, it's not a good trade if you're trading 2s for 3s, right? That's bad business. That's a bad investment. So while Sacramento has shown, I think, a consistency over these first 5 games to be able to score that 2-point shot and those mid-range buckets at a more regular rate than their opponents, their opponent 3-point shooting is allowing them to stick around and close gaps quickly, because at best the Kings are trading 3 for 2. So one of these two things can happen, or ideally both. One, the Kings clean up their 3-point defense and do a better job at getting that opponent 3-point shooting percentage down, which needs to happen in general with how bad the Kings 3-point defense was last season. Or Sacramento needs to start hitting threes again at a more high, consistent rate. Because I think especially against really, really good teams that are known for that 3-point shot, and Atlanta's a good 3-point shooting team, but really, really good teams known for those threes, Kings are going to have a hard time. We're going to see a lot more of their double-digit leads erased quickly, or even more frightening is, what if the Kings fall down by double digits, right? And they're trying to climb their way back with 2s instead of 3s themselves. That's where things might get a little bit dicey for this team. But we'll have to wait and see. All right, now I want to hear your thoughts on this Kings game in general. A great win for Sacramento. They're above 500 for the first time this season. 3 straight wins. You love to see it. Got a chance to make it 4 straight wins in a very gettable game against the Toronto Raptors tomorrow night, facing Davion Mitchell for the first time. So we'll see if Off Night tries for any sort of revenge against the Sacramento Kings. But a very gettable game against a very vulnerable Toronto Raptors team. I think Atlanta is better than Toronto, and you handled Atlanta. I know it's the second night of a back-to-back, but you can go and handle Toronto and then get ready for the road trip finale in Miami against the Heat. And even though the Heat aren't that great this year, Miami is typically, for reasons you can probably guess, a very difficult place to play, and historically has been a tough place for the Sacramento Kings to win. So let's see if they can. I mean, that would be amazing if they could go perfect 4-0 on this road trip, but one step at a time. Go to Toronto tomorrow night, find a way to win that game. But I look forward to that. I want to hear your thoughts on tonight's game. How you feeling about that Fox and DeRozan combo? What are your thoughts on like Keegan Murray, Domantas Sabonis tonight, that fourth quarter in general, that collapsed lead, but able to secure it and pull it out. Just how you feeling about the Kings right now? Hit me up, let me know. At MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com, or leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. I'll be back with you again tomorrow night, sooner after the hopefully another Kings win. I'll be back. It won't be as late as it was tonight. Again, I appreciate your patience. Hopefully doing another post-win Sacramento Kings podcast. But win or lose, Locked On Kings will be here. I appreciate you. Can't wait to have you join me on that episode. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.